In the span of just 1 week, 7 days, right? The Supreme Court has ruled itself above the FDA, the EPA, the FCC, the FAA, OSHA, SEC by throwing out Chevron. They have allowed themselves, looking at you, Clarence, looking at you, Alito, they have allowed themselves to be legally bribed with gifts. No more smoky back rooms. It can happen right out front, right on the steps of the Supreme Court, and there ain't a damn thing we can do about it. All prison sentences for the treasonous January 6ers. Cut. Given a haircut. No big deal, right? This Supreme Court has banned homelessness. Try to overthrow the government? No big deal. Don't have enough money to sleep indoors to feed yourselves? We're not going to come up with a fix for it. We're not a Christian society where we want to help people. Nah, we'll just make it illegal. And saving the worst for last, the finale, the denouement. The Supreme Court has declared that presidents are now above the law. Presidents are given immunity, declaring them would-be dictators. 20 plus years ago, if you would have told me during the Bush administration, you know, the guy who nominated these two Federalist Society foundlings, if you would have told me back then, Chief Justice Roberts, a guy who's presided over Citizens United to this presidential immunity case, Supreme Court Justice Alito, who believes in the Constitution, who believes in American exceptionalism so much, he hangs his flag like this outside of his house. If you would have told me George W. Bush, after being rewarded the presidency by the Supreme Court, and then feeding it to right-wing ideologues, the Republican Party who used 9/11, told us that the terrorists hated us for our freedom. They hate us because of our freedom, and then used that event, that tragedy, to take more of our freedoms. Even further back than that. Go back 20 more years. If you would have told me this mush for brains, corporate shill, who, you know, had an undying quest to bring the radical religious right into the base of the Republican Party, a criminal with 138 indictments, investigations, and arrests during his presidency. What, you think Trump was the first criminal this Republican Party put at the front? If you would have told me he would create an underbelly of neocons whose fire burns hotter than jet fuel into the side of a building called our republic, if you would have told me that this party that I've known my entire life has simply one end, is addicted to simply one thing, and that is power, a party that has moved from spreading fear on a daily basis to then an hourly basis, and now you could open your phone and they spread fear, hate, division every single second of the day. If you would have told me about this party that's been like this my entire life, if you would have told me that once they got their hands on the throat of this republic, they would squeeze and squeeze until it was dead, would I have believed you? Of course I would have believed you, because I've been trying to warn you. Trump is the new Adolf. Welcome to the channel, The Chud Report. I'm your host, MJ. If this is your first time here, I'm sorry this is the first episode that, you got to see. But if you like it, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Justice Sonia Sotomayor did not hold back her dissent of this ruling. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal persecution. Orders by Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. Something Trump's lawyer literally argued he could do. Immune organizes a military coup to hold on to power. Immune takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon. Immune. She continued, let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. I mean, she's nailing it perfect, but it still feels like an understatement. That is the majority's message today. Even in these nightmare scenarios play out, and they will play out, have no doubt. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. I'm telling you, I still feel like she's underselling it, even though she's stating it perfect. What this country's about to go through. She continues, never in the history of our republic has a president had a reason to believe that he would be immune from criminal persecution if he used the trapping of his office to violate the criminal law. For good reason, right? That deterrent is what protects the republic. I mean, moving forward, however, all former presidents will be cloaked in such immunity. If the occupant of that office misuses official power for personal gain, the criminal law that the rest of us must abide by will not provide a backstop. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. Sotomayor. That's how she ended her opinion on this batshittery. And honestly, to be, one of the liberal judges on this court, not just to be a judge that still believes in the republic, still believes in the Constitution, just to be one of them, that serve this country and not the Heritage Foundation. Watching this happen must be like watching your kid, drown in quicksand. And to be honest with the ruling from today, I mean, Sotomayor, Jackson, they could be targeted. Literally. And all the president would have to do, all Trump would have to do, or whoever comes after him, who's ever worse than this, all they would have to do is say that was an official government act. I'm not being hyperbolic. And to be 100% honest, I don't know if saying that breaks YouTube's terms of service. But that's the point we're at now. We're just to talk about what the president is allowed to do in this country after today is not even allowed in the terms of service on, this video site. That's where we are, 2024.
So I'd like to pick up on the part that you were reading from Justice Sotomayor, because she talks about this parade of horribles. And one of the things that was so revealing is Justice Roberts does not address them. He does not
of course he doesn't.
Talk about how the test that the majority opinion lays out in any way would give us any comfort that there's a problem.
You want comfort? This is a coup.
Using SEAL Team 6, he just says these are fanciful. He doesn't in any way say why this test of if it's official conduct, it's immune, why everything that Justice Sotomayor is saying is not completely something to worry about.
And if you're wondering what constitutes an official act, of course, these conservative judges, these Heritage Foundation, lemmings, weren't clear on that. Because why would they be? You could spend years going through courts, lower courts, appeals over, what's official and what's not. So I made a pretty detailed chart to help you understand what constitutes an official act and what constitutes an unofficial act. So here we have an official act. If you're a Republican, it's official. Okay, you got that? Take notes. I'll wait. Now, for an unofficial act, it's right here. If you're a Democrat, it's unofficial. Are there any questions? No. I'm not actually asking if you have a question. I just want to point you out to the CIA as an official act. Get rid of them. As long as it's an official act.
And wait, there's more. The majority opinion says, with respect to the Department of Justice, that part of the criminal case that was brought by Jack Smith is out. Why? Because that is under the take care clause of the Constitution. That is exclusively within the president's power. And so even where there is a sham prosecution, he is immune. Just think about it for a moment. The relationship of the president to the Department of Justice is, even if the president knows and the allegation is it's a sham case,
Are you
immune.
hearing this?
So let me ask you about things that already happened.
Are you hearing
because
this?
They also
Donald Trump can and Donald Trump will, for his entire presidency, like they're saying here, bring sham trials through a Justice Department, and he can never be held accountable for it because that is an official act. Do you understand how we're approaching the end if we're not already knocked out on our feet of this republic? You're detached from it. They're taking you out of the equation. The only people now that matter are the people that own the Supreme Court, and you can bribe them right on the steps, or the people that own the presidency. And if you really want to be sick to your stomach, here it is, right here. Let's go ahead and read his tweet about this, his truthy about this. The Supreme Court decision is a much more powerful one than some had expected it to be. Obviously, I could tell because you're writing in all caps, which all sane people do. It is brilliantly written and wise and clears the stench from the Biden trials and hoaxes, all of them. I think we all know where the stench was coming from the one trial he actually had to stand for. That has been used as an unfair attack on crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, me. He has to clear that up for the chuds, just so they don't get confused that he's talking about himself as Joe Biden's political opponent. Many of these fake cases will now disappear or wither into obscurity. God bless America. The 4th of July is this week. That's the week they decided to do the ruling that will most likely, not being hyperbolic here, end our republic. July 4th, with a Supreme Court justice who hangs his flag like this. So he hangs his American flag. I think that breaks my HOA if I even did it. But I guess if you're a Supreme Court justice, a Republican, as long as you do it as an official government act. Uncle Thomas's wife planning January 6th, lobbying her husband after the attack to overturn the election. Both of these people came in to decide this.
John, just one quick question before I let you both go. What would have happened with President Nixon if this ruling were in place?
Well, there are actually two rulings in this decision. There's a 6-3 for presumptive immunity, but there's also a 5-4 on you can't even have the evidence of official conduct come to play. This to me appears to certainly influence the existing law on presidential conduct, what's available, evidentiary speaking. Amy Coney Barrett said she didn't think that it should be so restricted as the decision of the court itself was. So I think that Nixon would have survived. I think he would have walked under this ruling. And I'm sifting through all of the known evidence at the time. There's more known today, but just looking at what was in the bills of impeachment, he's not responsible. He has no criminal liability, and that was considered to be one of the elements of a high crime and misdemeanor if a president had committed a crime. Well, there are no more crimes for presidents in official conduct.
You have been locked out of your government.
Very interesting. John Dean.
That's what she's saying. That's what John Dean's saying. Richard Nixon would have survived, and that is the point. Roger Ailes, head of Fox News, he worked for both Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan as their head of propaganda, their head of media. And when Reagan took the shackles of the fairness doctrine off of him, he was able to go full steam ahead into a network that, obfuscates reality. It redirects middle-class rage, even lower-class rage, into culture wars, right? Back then, it was, what? Welfare queens? They were mad about the war on Christmas then, all the way up to now with Bud Light. And Fox News, the propaganda that Reagan delivered on us, it started moving these people away from caring about their unions, from caring about their government, from caring about their leaders to, the culture war stuff, like I said. The same stuff the morons care about today. The Bud Lights. War Christmas. That started when I was a kid, right? In the 90s. And before that, the welfare queens. And what's the purpose of redirecting all this? Well, they're so worried about all this, they're still worried about it today. Go tune in to any, right-wing influencer. See what they're talking about. Are they talking about marginal tax rates? Are they talking about issues? Of course not. They're talking about culture war. And let the Heritage Foundation and all the others get their roots in here. Get their roots into the Supreme Court. Every single judge on that Supreme Court was picked. The Federalist Society. Every single conservative one. And I'll say it again, to top it off, only Clarence Thomas was picked by a president that won the popular vote. Hell, the Supreme Court handed W the election. Not only did he lose the popular vote, he lost that actual election. They handed it over to him, and then he gave them 2 more conservative judges. So you want to talk about a deep state that's going to be with us for decades? There's your deep state. There's your conspiracy. There are your kings. If the court was made up of the electorate, the actual popular vote of the last 30 years, we would have 8 liberal judges, 8 sane judges, 8 center judges, and only 1 right-wing judge, which would be Uncle Thomas. This is going to take decades to fix, if it ever gets fixed. I mean, this could be it. Good run. A convicted felon who lost the popular vote twice. Who had one of the worst presidencies, if not the worst, in our country's history. And look how it ended. That guy is going to be able to decide, make decisions, if he gets back in there, that will affect you for literally the rest of your life. Decades. And if that sounds good to you, might I suggest you get the full lobotomy to finish the job? And let's pretend just for a second that the Democratic president is just a little bit younger. The best thing to do at this point is to just hammer home how bad this ruling is by running with this standard for the next 6 months. Just off the top of my head, Biden could do an official order to destroy all the servers with student loan information on them at the Department of Education. Off the top of my head. It's an official order, so there isn't anything you could do about it. And I can't even say the other things Biden should do right now because, as I said, YouTube terms of service probably. But it would be criminal for Biden not to use this new immunity granted to him by the highest court in the land, because I'm sure they would be fine with the Democratic president doing it. I'm sure the Supreme Court would be fine with the Democratic president officially ordering. It's an official act. It's an official act by the executive ordering the military to suspend the election. I'm sure Alito and Thomas would be overjoyed that their new ruling is being put to use. And the only thought I'm left with after this news, after hearing all this, is something TJ once said. Something he once said about a tree needing water. Go ahead and look it up. The Chud Report. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the live last week, those that were there. Turns out I have COVID, but I think I'm over it now. I took the Paxlovid. If you get it, it helped me a lot. So I'm like in the 4th day of taking that. The show's back. We're going to be on more regular. I'm back. If it's your first time here and you enjoyed content like this, I always say it, but you shouldn't enjoy content like this. This is a terrible day for democracy. But if you enjoy me talking about this terrible day for democracy, for the republic, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Keep us in the good algorithm. And yeah, we're back. The Chud Report.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone.